Hello and welcome to this multimedia presentation where I'm excited to be discussing one of the tribes we've learned about in class, specifically the Kwakiutl. Here is the phonetic pronunciation of that name. They have some interesting stuff going on with their name. There is some confusion surrounding it. Researching this, I also found the preferred tribal name Kwakwakyawakwuh. Trying my best. This means speaker of the Kwakiwala language. This name is a broad category that includes everyone who speaks the language, and the Kwakiutl are only one of the groups who speak it. But sometimes, people lump everyone together under the name Kwakiutl, which just isn't right. It's kind of like the square rectangle thing. Not all Kwakiwako are Kwakiutl, but all Kwakiutl are Kwakiwako. Because of this confusion, researching the tribe produces varying results, so I just want to acknowledge right now that all of these groups are separate and have different cultures, and it's impossible for me to simplify that richness into one little video. So I might be accidentally cherry picking bits from different groups of the Kwakwakiwako, but calling it Kwakiutl culture for the sake of simplifying for the video. I mentioned the language the Kwakiutl speak a minute ago, so I think it makes sense that I start with that. Their language and linguistic group is Kwakiwala. It belongs to the Wakashan language family. It has many sounds that we don't have in English, but it bears similarities to other languages in the Pacific Northwest. It was exclusively a spoken language. It wasn't written until first contact with Europeans in the 18th century. And these Europeans had a hard time documenting it, and they had to use special symbols to even try and capture the complexities of it. There are programs with the mission of reviving the language today. It's estimated that right now there's around 585 fluent speakers. So, just to get a sense of how much of the Kwakiutl people that is, let's talk about their population size. Previously, the earliest estimates say that there were 28 communities. Before European contact, there could have been 19,000 Kwakiutl people. But then epidemics lowered that number to 1,000 by the year 1921. Modern estimates say that those 28 communities were reduced by around a half. But the 2016 census showed that 3,760 people self identify as having Kwakiutl ancestry. There's also an upward trend, so this number is increasing. But where do all these people live? Some geographic information about the Kwakiutl. Their traditional or historical home is in the northwest region, like the coastal areas of northeastern Vancouver Island and mainland British Columbia. Um, it's a colder area with thick forests and, of course, access to the ocean. Their present home is still in the British Columbia area. For many contemporary Kwakiutl, there wasn't any mass relocation in their history. Um, so how does one get around in such an area? What did the Kwakiutl have for forms of transportation? They carved very big dugout canoes from cedar logs. They used these canoes in the ocean to get around for hunting, fishing, warfare, and trading. And yes, they did trade with many people, and the Kwakiutl had rich economic activities. They traded and interacted mostly with the Haida and Tlingit tribes. The Kwakiutl sought out Tlingit's weavings and strong canoes from the Haida. Once the Europeans made contact, the Kwakiutl would trade furs and beaver pelts for things like guns and wool. But anytime different cultures meet, there's bound to be some disagreements. Sometimes this can lead to militarism. The Kwakiutl relations with other nearby tribes could be volatile. They had positive trade interactions a lot, but would also sometimes carry out raids to steal resources or capture slaves. Kwakiutl men fought with bows and arrows, spears, or war clubs. Some of them also wore bulky armor fashioned out of wooden rods tied together. They also had conflict with the Europeans. The Europeans, especially Hudson Bay Company, depended on Native Americans for beaver pelts. They traded peacefully for a long time, but eventually Europeans started trying to force them into confusing treaties. And results of this conflict, the Kwakiutl had much of their historical homeland taken and resources exploited. I think it's also worth noting that the Europeans brought tuberculosis and smallpox, which caused giant epidemics. And epidemics don't just kill people, they can kill a culture as well. Another way the Europeans tried to eradicate the Kwakiutl culture came from alliances, treaties, and federal acts the Kwakiutl have been involved in. Um, in 1885, the federal government banned the traditional practice of potlatching, but it was still done in secret. At one point, Chief Dan Cranmer held a potlatch, at which 45 people were arrested. And this federal ban was repealed in 1951. But what exactly is a potlatch that makes it so troublesome it just had to be banned? It's part of Kwakiutl celebrations, events, and holidays. The Kwakiutl have a year that is split into a summer season and a winter season. Traditionally, they have a potlatch at the end of each season, but potlatches are also held for other celebrations. They are big get togethers in which the host gives away great gifts from their own belongings. The federal government feared such large meetings of the indigenous people and wanted to eradicate their culture in any way they could. So they banned potlatching on the premise that it's too lavish. But the potlatch served a practical purpose as well. It was part of the Kwakiutl government and societal structure. It was a way of publicly acknowledging class structure and like a person's status. The more someone gives away, the more influential, powerful, and wealthy they are. Titles were also sometimes passed on at potlatches. A lot of the society structure was influenced by lineage. Some of the clans are held in especially high esteem. Social status could be quite complicated because marriage was used to transmit things like ceremonial privileges, masks, wealth, etc. And there's a complex system of bride prices. But another complex part of Kwakiutl culture is religion and spirituality. In contemporary times, many Kwakiutl people identify with Christianity and blend traditional beliefs with it. These beliefs vary between clans and groups. One commonality is that humans appeared long ago. They have many variations of creation stories from there, though. That's about the only thing that's the same. Some versions say that their ancestors took off their animal masks and there were humans beneath. And this is how the different lineages came to be. Different families came from different animals like the killer whale, wolf, bear, raven, etc. And then the families bear the crest of these animals. They are the clans. There's also a belief in multiple realms, which would be the mortal world, the sky world, the land beneath the sea, and the ghost world. Another interesting spiritual tradition is the Hamatsa Society. New members of this exclusive society had to undergo a lengthy and difficult initiation. They were brought into the forest for as long as 4 months, one of my sources said. And in the forest, they were possessed by a supernatural being. And when the initiate returned, they took part in a ceremony to tame this being with a dance. There's lots and lots of dancing with the Kwakiutl. It's a tie between religion and art. And the Kwakiutl have some awesome art forms. Here's a clip of that dance that I just mentioned. You'll see the masks that they wear, which is another art form. They had really elaborate masks, and they are important to the families. It's kind of like an heirloom. Another art is totem poles, which usually depict the clan's ancestor animal or a representation of the clan's history. The Kwakiutl also made baskets and wood carvings. So much of their art is connected to their spirituality. And so was their medicine and healthcare. The Kwakiutl had some spiritual practices when someone was sick. The sick person is laid in a sweatbox full of stones, seaweed, and cedar tips. The sweatbox is heated, and people pray over it that the sick person is not taken. They also have interesting medicine practices for childbirth. Cedar bark, a deer's tail, octopus arms, and the tip of a snake's tail are used by a husband to caress his pregnant wife while she's in gestation. But that is the last aspect of the Kwakiutl tribe that I'm going to be discussing today. Overall, they have a fantastic history and culture. Thank you for watching.